So today it's probably the holy grail of videos, and that is a brand new sealed RVC220, I'm led to believe, which the customer has paid a lot of money for. And I'm just going to look in at this sticker because I think this has been supplied by one of the mail order catalogues like Great Universal, Littlewoods, Grattan's, Empire Stores or whatever, and I just think we may be able to zoom in and see where its origin was. Of course it could be a return, couldn't it? But if it's sealed it wouldn't be returned as faulty. So just see if we can zoom in for a start on that label. So I'm stood up trying to see if there's a logo by the one. You know what? I'll just pause the video. It actually says Freeman's. I think the camera is too close now to focus. Let's just have a press of some buttons. No. Okay, so it's Freeman's. So I'll put the camera back to its normal position. So, like a lot of CB radios at the time, they're sold by mail order catalogues who offered 20-week payment terms free. You'd be paying full recommended retail price, but you wouldn't be paying any more to borrow their money. They would also offer extended credit for a fee for those people who like to pay things with interest. So we're going to, I'm just going to zoom this out a little bit. The only time we do this is when we've bought new sets to show you. So this sellotape has long perished. I should be on the organ. Dum da 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 dum 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 fanfare. Well, that is factory sealed. So we're going to leave the mic until later. I'm going to put the box somewhere carefully. We've left this cloth on here from the Immaculate Comtron yesterday. This gentleman sent 3 radios in, a 220, 230, 240. I'm going to do them in this sequence. If you hate looking at Cybernet 134 sets, well, you're going to be putting up with this for a few videos yet. Plastic bags can be dangerous. Put baby in bag and things like that, you know, the kind of rigmarole. So there we have it, a sealed RVC 220. And the serial number 622. We are going to unseal it. There should be some sexy music playing from that French single, Je suis something. There we go, brand new set. I get to sniff it. Well, it smells of a fusty brand new radio. Let's get that on the lights. serial number, so when you see it on eBay for £9.99, it's 120622. It's got the plastic which is going to stay there on the maker's plate. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect it up, and we're going to connect it up to 9 volts 300 milliamps. Mr. Chippy and I have discussed this a few days ago as to how we're going to power this up, because in view of its age, the electrolytic capacitors may fail on switch on. So, making sure the radio is switched off, power supply on, 9 volts, 300 milliamps selected. I'm wanting to monitor the current on switch on. We'll switch it on. £145 milliamps. That's absolutely fine. 144. I'm going to select channel 20. So we've got dust in the switch because it's never been used. You notice the it looked like the bar was out on the tube, but it isn't really. Or not dust, it's just going to have tarnished over the years. So we're at 206 milliamps, and I'm going to select 13.8 volts. I'll tell you what, we'll select 12.5. So we're now at 292 milliamps, no change. Now we'll go for 13.8. 320 milliamps, no change. I'm now feel quite safe that we can set the power supply to 1.6 amps. So I didn't want to start it off at 13.8 volts because something could have failed. So I think I've done the right approach. And there, and that's the brightness it's supposed to be on a new set. It tends to be a bit brighter, especially that headlight set yesterday. I emailed the customer with the 240 and said, do you want me to change that bulb, or is it something you fitted and you like? So I've given him that opportunity just before we ship it back to him, because it works great. It just looks daft with that. Some people don't get it, that LEDs of that colour weren't around in 1981, and it's just, I don't know, it's like having a Morris Minor with LED lights, isn't it? That's a motor car to American people from the late 50s and 60s. You know, or the funniest one will be the 1937 Rolls Royce, which you cut out the burr walnut dashboard to fit a CD player. Yeah. Ruin. So I'm going to switch it back off. We'll connect the test instrument speaker. And we'll connect the test equipment, which has been on 15 minutes, so we won't take that much notice of what it says frequency wise. Because we want to see how badly these perform out of the box, because I can assure you they weren't shipped at full whack just like they aren't today. They were normally shipped at well, the manufacturer service manual says don't ever set above 3.8 watts, so you know. So here's our standard Cybernet test mic, the one we always use on Cybernet sets. I've got the piece of paper, and we're not going to write using the set as a notepad today. I'll select picture in picture, then we can see these things together. We want to be together. Do you remember the advertisement for? I haven't had a telly for 20 years, so anything I quote off television is going to be more than 22 years ago. Rotel RVC220. I'm going to do all these 3 sets on this one piece of paper. TX. Radio back on. Channel 20 selected. Track. We're on the 3 watt scale. It's doing more than 3 watts. It's doing 3.2 watts. Deviation. I'm going to guess it's going to be 1.7. Voila! You know what? It's 2.2 to 2.5. I can't believe that. Wow, it's absolutely spot on. We're not going to need to adjust that. I'll knock 50 pence off his bill. So, bearing in mind the radio does 3.2 watts, what does the meter say on the front? Because whatever it gives out, they're supposed to be set to 4. It's about 3.8 on that meter, which is where it should be set to. It's all psychological. So, see how on frequency it is after all these years, because crystals drop naturally with age. So you buy a new old stock colour television, which obviously will be a CRT one, and it's 40 years old like this, the chances are there'll be no colour, because the colour reference crystal, which in the UK is 4.433, something like that, America is 3.57 megahertz, it will have dropped with age, and so the reference oscillator isn't going to run. So, you know, people buying new old stock things, don't expect them to work. There's a lot of new old stock stuff that's returns. Okay, so we're going to set 2779125 on a signal generator. Just giving the... Actually, we're not. We're going to go back to transmit and just check what it's the frequency is. 2779095. So that's absolutely what you'd expect. It's still in spec. That is fine. Anything once you start getting to 07 something or other, it doesn't really need to be pulling up. It does start to be noticeable. So that's that. So we're going to set the receive to the same as the transmit, so that it's a fair assessment. So we'll just drop it from there to 095. You can see why we use this 1983 test set and not... I did have Marconi 2955s, are they? The ones with the screen. But they're too slow to work with. They were the B version as well, the white, the cream one, which they were 10,500 quid a piece. These are quicker, but they don't do some of the CTCSS as quickly as with or selective calling at all. We're not doing selective calling, so we don't need to use that kind of test set. And at least this is repairable, and with normal parts you'd expect to be able to get. So 2779097 I think is fair. Let's go back to transmit and just see what it's transmitting on again. So 2779096, yep. So we're about the same. So turn the volume up, and we'll switch to the synad meter. And this time, we don't normally do this, I'm going to do 10, 12 and 20. So we'll start off with 10. So at the moment we're listening to 1 microvolt. So we're moving the attenuator, so we have 10 dB. It's 0.47 microvolts for 10 dB synad. So we'll go to 12, which is the one we usually use. 0.62 microvolts for 12 dB synad, and then there's the 20. We have to change scales for that. .63 microvolts for 20 dB cyanide. Okay, that's our results for that brand new set, and that's absolutely what you'd expect, because it's never going to be more than 3.8 watts, because the manufacturers always have to set them low. That surprises me, because normally they want it to come up a bit. That's par for the course, because crystals drop with age, and this is probably as good as it's going to get, because that won't have shifted. But this is going to be a test of how well it was aligned at the factory. Are they given 20 seconds and a bowl of rice to do it? I don't know. I've got more time to do it. Right, we'll turn the radio off. You know what? There's a flaw in the paint just there. I'll use the other side of the pen to point it out. I thought it was an eyelash, because I'm supposed to be blonde, but it's actually a minute little scratch. Probably sent it back to Freeman's because they didn't like it. What I'm doing, I'm taking the test equipment off. I need to be putting the screwdriver to use. So making sure I'm using the right screwdriver. Let's take the that back to there, and we'll just pop it off for now. I don't want to mar the screws. If you ever have difficulty, I'm telling you this as a church organ builder, if you ever have difficulty start getting screws to move when they've been in 40 years, just try and screw them forwards so they're even tighter, just a little fraction, and it will break the seal. I've no doubt some expert in physics will say why, but time and time again, you try and untighten them, they don't want to come out. Just tighten that a little bit more, and they'll come out easier. And if you're dealing with 100-odd-year-old church organs, it means that only half the screws snap. Okay. Was it Je T'aime, that sexy record from the 80s, 70s? So yellow goes to positive, so that is proof. There's a piece of polystyrene just there. I get to sniff the radio, and that does smell of new, but a little bit musty. Right, so we're going to check the VCO, for which we're going to have to get the service manual out, because I can't remember. But I do remember we start on channel 40. Radio back on. Selecting channel 40. Finding other glasses. I'm hoping to do a bit of catching up with the scratchy corner test, so I'll do this and the Route 66 Mark 1 that we did the other day. I'm really wanting to see how that performs on the scratchy corner. Anyone saw where I put my other glasses? Oh yeah, up there. Thank you. So here we go. Oh, that's Tate 2000 adjustments. That's business radios. actually do things in between CBs. So it's 4 volts we're looking for. I'll borrow Mr. Chippy's test lead, which he hasn't noticed I've borrowed. There we go. Resistor 4, far side. Interestingly, there's no wax in the coil, and it's actually out of spec. It's minutely out. It's supposed to be 4 volts plus or minus 0.1 on receive, and it's 4.27. So we'll just get that right, because otherwise there's a possibility it may not work on channel 40 or channel 1 when not at normal room temperature. So it's only going to be the minutest, tiniest. Okay, 4.01. And then we go to transmit, and it's again supposed to be 4 volts. It's 3.65, it's a little bit low. This time it's the red trimmer, CT1, isn't it? So I'm going to leave it at 4.07, that's within spec, and receive 4.01. And now we go to channel 1, and we check that on channel 1 it's 1.8 to 2.5 on transmit. So back to the test point, transmit is 1.1 to 2. I'm in the wrong mode on my test set. That's spot on. And on receive, slightly different, 1.9 to 2.5. Absolutely spot on. But I'd hate this gentleman to get this set back, and if we hadn't have done that, for it not to work at a certain temperature on channels above 37 or something like that would be absolutely typical of the VCO not being set correctly. A little bit of a curvature in the back. You'd think if this came through as a normal repair, you'd think it's been clonked on the back, but it's been in that box all the time. So we'll go through the normal transmit lineup. We'll go back to channel 20. Put picture in picture back on. Peak, didn't need adjusting. Peak, not quite centralised, it is now. Peak, and that's correct. Now I'll get the other set of test trimming tools out. The Derlin ones, which cost me an arm and a leg. L4 for maximum. That's 5.5 watts. L 4 for maximum. 5.6 watts. L9 for maximum. 5.7 watts. Recheck this one. Recheck the other two. I'm being quick because you don't want it to get too hot. It's not supposed to be running at this level. There you go. So that's it's set up very well, because some only just manage the 4 watts and some will be up here, and it's not necessarily because of use. It's just tolerance of components. And so now we set the yellow one, L4, clockwise to obtain 4.4 watts. Don't be daft and leave it at 5 watts. Legality aside, don't do silly things like that, because what you do is you thrash it. It won't balance on all the 40 channels, so you'll end up with 5 watts on one particular channel and 2.5 watts at the band edges, and it puthering out all kinds of stuff. So 4.4 watts on that one, and then turning it down, they say to 3.8, but we're going to be turning it down to 4, because that's the legal maximum in every country I'm aware of for AM and FM. So there we have it. Now we need to check channel 1 and 40 to make sure that they're bouncing within 0.1. Channel 1, 3.9 and a tiny bit. Now I'm going to just bring this up a fraction. So I've brought that to exactly on 4. Let's see what happens on 40. It's bang on 4. So now when we go to 20, I'm expecting it to be 4.0 something. And it is, it's about, it's soon dropping down. 4.0 and a tiny bit. Well within the measuring allowance. So that's really well balanced. Now deviation, we don't need to adjust. We'll just recheck it. Voila. And in fact, it could do with coming up a fraction. Just centralise that one, and we'll adjust it on this one. So using the Korg TM50 chromatic tuner, not a guitar tuner, and it's set to B flat on the 440 frequency standard, thereby giving us 932 kilohertz, which is near to 1 kilohertz as we can cheaply generate. So we'll just bring that up a fraction. That's the meter, wrong one. See where that is? Wallow, wallow. That is bang on the money. So that's now reminded me to do the meter. So keying up, meter's supposed to be 4 watts. And you know that little twiddle I did, it just brought it spot on. There we go. Right. We'll turn our attentions to, tell you what, we'll do transmit. We've now had the test set on for more than half an hour, so we'll do the transmit frequency, which of course is everything on this chassis. There we go. So we've got 4 watts. That's correct. 27,79027, so it's very slightly high. And now we'll turn our attentions to the receiver. So we're going to start with the detector, and on this set it shouldn't be out. So with an S9 equivalent signal from the signal generator of 100 microvolt, we'll put the camera onto that. Turn the bench light off so it's a bit more easy to see. And T12. Check its optimum. It was absolutely spot on. Now we'll go to the cyanide meter. Not quite sure why that isn't ever central, but I don't know how to set the memory on the camera. I'd have to get the instruction book out. So we'll put that tool away, and we'll now be taking the attenuator down to about 4 dB, so what I see is meaningful. So as you know, because I've said a million times, there's one stage less in the receiver on the 220 than there is on the 230 and the 240. And conversely, there's the same stage less if you buy the Binatone Speedway than if you buy the Binatone 5-star. But don't be misled, because the SMC Oscar 1, with its unusual front, which looks like an American Cybernet model of a bygone era, because it is a Cybernet model, that has the tip-top receiver, even though it's only an RF volume squelch type set. So if I can find where I've put my trim tool. Right, some volume so we get a meaningful amount of signal into the cyanide meter, and we'll start there. Hey folks, we've got quite an improvement there. I'll have to go down a scale. Let's take the signal up for that one. Higher than that. Lower than that. Now over to the IF one. Check that with a bigger signal, bigger than that. And then we'll check the one there. Bigger signal, bigger than that. Right, I'm going to just recheck the first one again. Second, no, I think I'm there. That is meticulous, like it should be. Right, I'm happy. That is optimum. Let's get a reading from the cyanide meter. So for 10 dB, we have 0.32. For 12 dB, we have 0.42. And for 20, it's worse, so we've actually got something out. So we'll find out what that is. It's going to be that or that. I think we had the most difficulty with that one. Recheck this one. I'll check the others now again, because it could have affected it. So for 10, got 0.38. For 12, .48. For 20, I'm tempted to put the lid on. Just loose. Not getting any better than that. Okay, so I found the anomaly. It is this coil. It's actually quite a way out. So we'll just move that across and we'll put these down again. So we're now at 10 dB and we've now got 0.29. 12 dB. .39. And for 20, we've got 1. So actually that took some tuning. So that coil would considerably out. So why would that be? Right. So we'll go for a 100 microvolt signal on the signal generator and take that off, and let's make sure the meter says S9. Look at that, it's bang on the money, S9, absolutely as they've calibrated it. If we needed to adjust it, it's the preset there, but we don't. Squelch. So I want the squelch so that its maximum is 100 microvolts S9. We're going to turn the squelch to full. I'll switch picture in picture to the attenuator. So if my glasses aren't in the way, that's 1 microvolt, 3 microvolts, 10 microvolts, 30 microvolts, 100 microvolts, exactly where we want it to come in. So again, the squelch preset is there, we don't need to touch it. So now we'll do the opposite. I'm going to park the signal generator at 0.3 of a microvolt and then switch the signal generator off to standby. Turn the squelch down on the radio and set the threshold. Switch the signal generator back on and see when it comes in. It's come straight in. So it's coming in at 0.3 of a microvolt and it's going off at 0.26 of a microvolt. We never have a very wide hysteresis on Cybernet 134 sets, but it is adequate and it's sensitive. So we're done. I'm so pleased we're able to get more out of the receiver. And for the first time in this radio's life, it actually might get a bit of use. I think I'll pause the video and have lunch, and then we'll get the microphone out and just check that the deviation with the factory mic is the same as with my standard replacement mic. I'd hate to send it back and it's not quite as it should be. So we'll pause it at that and then we'll put it on the air and see what bucket mouths and music players in Nottingham are on today. Thing we didn't check when I came back to this. We never checked transmit on low power because there's a switch at the back. So we know the radio is doing full 4 watts. So what's it doing on? Oh, nothing. No, it's not working on low power. I'm glad I checked that. Now, these presets are often dirty. So, a bit of service on there and we'll work it around and see whether that's the problem. No. In that case, the switch is going to be the problem. So we'll put a bit of service on the switch. And I'll just work that around. 4 watts. There we are, that's it. Oh, I'm glad I checked that. And there we have it, bang on 400 milliwatts. Helps if I show you the right meter. 400 milliwatts. Change scales to 30 watt scale, switch to full power, 4 watts. Done. So we'll get that put together as we originally said. Okay, so that's the lid back on. Check the internal speaker works. It does. And we will just plug the aerial in and see what good and bad buddies are out there. Well, Nana Roger.
Normally come at 9 o'clock. Didn't come till about half an hour ago. And I thought, well, I'm going to tidy up down the side of the caravan then. It's not all my rubbish anyway, it's all next door. All these bushes and things. And they might all tidy up.
Sensible conversation, but with a bit of a horrible echo. Roger. We'll just check that original mic. I'll do that behind the scenes and then we'll do it on the air test, which you'll hear both mics. So thanks for watching the immaculate unboxing of the Grail Rotel RVC220 from 42 years ago. Don't think we'll be doing another of those.